Hi, my name is Max.
And I'm Maria.
And welcome back to Let's Talk About Listening. So, Maria, we're talking about Bruno Mars today. You want to tell us a little bit about Bruno Mars? I know you're obviously a big fan, as am I. But, what's your experience like with Bruno Mars?
So obviously he has a huge amount of songs out, so many different albums. And they relate to pretty much any age group. You 5-year-olds who will listen to Bruno Mars. I mean, do they understand it? Probably not. But then you can listen. You have grandparents who will listen to Bruno Mars, and his range of songs, it's amazing. He has nice songs. He can rap. He's insanely talented, so he can go from such a different variety of songs, and it's kind of awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. I feel like Bruno Mars is one of those artists. I think we were having this conversation earlier. It's like Bruno Mars and Billy Joel. I just feel like those are two artists that are just loved by everybody. I haven't met anyone who's oh yeah, I don't like Bruno Mars, or oh yeah, I don't like Billy Joel. I feel like those two artists in particular, I've never met anybody who's oh yeah, I hate their music, or I just, I don't vibe with them. I just feel like Bruno Mars is so universal among a bunch of different age groups. I think we were talking about this earlier as well. I was out in California with my great aunt and my great uncle, and they were telling me about how they were listening to Uptown Funk and how they play it on their Alexa every morning. And Uptown Funk, A, it's not even by Bruno Mars.
Right.
B, it came out in 2015, so it's a pretty old song. But I just think it's remarkable that here are these late 70s 70-year-old people just vibe into Uptown Funk. I really just think that sort of his fan base is just, it's so diverse, and it's just so amazing to see how many people of all different ages just love Bruno Mars,
Right, yeah. I'll listen to Bruno Mars now, and you never know, maybe I'll use one of his songs for my wedding.
Exactly. Yeah, no, hey, that would honestly be a really good idea. And I feel like a lot of people are definitely in the boat with using his songs at their weddings as well. So getting into, before we sort of talk analytically, what is your favorite Bruno Mars song? Or give me a top 5, or maybe a top 3.
I'll do a top 3.
Okay.
Probably Just the Way You Are.
Okay.
It's got to be a top 1. Huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
Just such a wholesome song. You listen
totally,
to it and you're
totally.
Yeah.
It's
you just
so,
vibe with it.
It's just wonderful, and it's just it's so pure, It just it really comes from the heart, which is awesome. What else?
It Will Rain.
Okay.
Which also is in the Twilight movies.
Okay.
So just a good go-to,
Mm-hmm.
If you're in your feels. It's a really good song,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot of them. And then Leave the Door Open, which is Silk Sonic.
Yeah, and the thing about Silk Sonic is it's both Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak.
Right.
So it's sort of this almost power duo, I feel like it's you take these two great artists and you combine them together, and it's like a super band almost, Yeah, Leave the Door Open is definitely one of my favorites for sure. It's his newer work though, right?
Yes,
yeah.
much newer. Just the Way You Are, older.
Mm-hmm.
Silk Sonic is pretty much what's live right now,
Exactly, the most relevant right now. I gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. He's got so much good stuff. And the thing with Bruno Mars, which I find funny, is that he has so many songs that he's recognized for that aren't even his songs. His first one, Nothing on You by B.O.B. or Bob or whatever, came out in 2010. Mm-hmm. But that's not Bruno Mars' song. Neither is Uptown Funk, which is by, I think, Mark Ronson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what was the other one we were talking about?
Billionaire,
exactly. Those 3 songs are arguably the most iconic Bruno Mars songs, but at the end of the day, they're not even Bruno Mars songs. They're just songs featuring Bruno Mars. But I feel like he sort of steals the spotlight.
No, yeah, when you hear those songs, you're oh yeah, that's Bruno Mars, but it's not actually written by him.
Yeah.
But songs he has written, have been made popular by other people too, which just shows his versatility. I think Justin Bieber had a song that he wrote it for Justin Bieber, and it made him big.
Do you remember which one that was? Or?
Love Me, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And then Forget You, which was huge. Bruno Mars wrote that.
CeeLo Green.
Yeah.
That's crazy that Bruno Mars wrote Forget You by CeeLo Green.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think that's awesome. No, that's really cool. I know, his songwriting capabilities, plus his voice, dude's got a great range. He has an awesome range. He can really get up there, but like he's also like he keeps it smooth, like you know, with some of the notes in the lower register as well,
Right.
which I think is awesome.
And that's like all about being a singer too. Like it's not even the fact that he can just sing, it's like his performance ability. Like he has to stand on stage and perform for millions of people.
Exactly.
And they have to like it. Like they're not going to pay for a concert they don't like to
totally.
see. So obviously he has to be a great performer, and he's got that down. He's got the dancing, he's got the singing, he's got like just the performance ability, which is awesome, which is why he has such the following that he does.
Totally. And now, have you ever been to a Bruno Mars concert?
I haven't, and I so badly wanted to go, but
Yeah.
he doesn't have anything in like our area right now. I think the closest is like Las Vegas,
Oh,
and like I
yeah,
can't go
that's-
in December, and the tickets are so expensive, which makes sense because everyone wants to see him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't been to a Bruno Mars concert.
Yeah, no, I think it would be really, really exciting to go to one. From the clips and like bits of stuff I've seen from online, he just looks like he's so smooth with you know his dancing and his singing, and everything just looks really well choreographed and timed, and it looks like not even it doesn't even look like a performance. It's more of an experience. Like I think they should
is,
call
yeah.
it the Bruno Mars experience.
Experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, no.
Well, yeah, he gets that from like such a young age too. Like his parents had a band,
Oh.
and when he was little, he performed in the band, and everyone thought of him as like young Elvis. I think like his nickname was Little Elvis, actually.
Really?
He did Michael Jackson impersonations. Like,
So you're telling me that Bruno Mars was an impersonator before he was like an actual like
yeah,
singer.
pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah, people saw him as that, and he had like all of that experience from his family because they had that band,
Mm-hmm. Right, 'cause
and
the
he
band,
learned that.
yeah,
So
okay.
obviously, it's in his blood.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And do you know at what age he started singing with his family band, or?
I think like he's always been involved
Right.
since he's been born, but I think like 4 was when
Oh
he said
wow.
like
Okay,
he
so
really
they started him real
yeah.
young. So it's like some Michael Jackson.
It is
5
some-
type
yeah,
stuff.
exactly, yeah.
Wow.
But,
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then his family, like, you know, his parents went through a divorce, so obviously that was rough. And he talks about in like an interview about really understanding what it is to be poor or like not have everything, and I think that gives him another like side that you wouldn't really see from lots of celebrities because he relates to people like of all, like making money, not making money, and where that comes from,
Yeah,
and
of all demographics.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, so he's pretty awesome.
That is pretty cool. And one of the things that I find, I guess not really funny, but just interesting about Bruno Mars is he's pretty short. Like he's 5'2" or
Yeah, he
5'3".
is.
Like he's not a super huge guy, but from the way that sort of his films are made, like his music videos are made, and sort of from the way that he like presents himself, like you'd think that the guy's at least 6 foot. Like he's got such bad boy energy, you know? That
Swagger.
like yeah, such swagger.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's got such swagger that like you're like, oh, this guy's at least like 6 foot tall, you know, 6'2", 6'3". But no, he's tiny. He's
Yeah,
little.
he's little,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a little guy. But definitely a powerful voice. Little guy, powerful voice, I will say. Yeah, even just I think he has 3 studio albums. He's got Doo-Wops and Hooligans, that was his first one.
Right.
Had, you know, the Lazy Song,
Yes.
you know, Marry You, Grenade, all that. And then he had Unorthodox Jukebox, Treasure, you know, songs more like that. And then 24 Karat Magic, which is his most recent as far as just
Him.
him, exactly. And that had, you know, Finesse, stuff like that.
Right.
24 Karat Magic, obviously. And then Silk Sonic. Let's talk about Silk Sonic for a second, because I remember when that album came out. I remember when they released the single, which was Leave the Door Open? Right, it was Leave the Door Open. I remember when they released Leave the Door Open, and I listened to it, and I was like, wow, this is just extremely well written. Like,
Right.
it's well written. Obviously well performed. But just everything, like the harmonies, everything just sort of flowed together,
Right.
which I really appreciated, especially as from a music consumer
Yeah.
side.
It has elements of like jazz, but also pop, and like you can listen to it in any circumstance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember Leave the Door Open came out, and I put my earbuds in, and I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
Like, this is really good. And then I got excited. I got excited for the actual
No, yeah, me too. I was
release
like, I
of the
can't wait
album.
for this album to come out. Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember I don't typically sit through albums, like I don't typically play albums just start to finish. Like I don't have the attention span for that. Like I get too distracted. But that one, I sat down and I played that album from start to finish And I didn't skip a single song. Like, that was a no skips album.
It was really
Granted,
good.
there's only like, I think 8 or 7
Yeah.
songs on it. There's not a whole lot. But they definitely went for quality over quantity.
Yes.
Because every single song on that album, I would be happy if it came
Right.
on, at a restaurant or, like in the mall or
Right.
whatever. Like,
And
I'd-
you can
I'd be
tell
vibing.
like that they think that through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, such a good album. Such a really well-made album. One of my favorites by Bruno Mars by far. And we can't forget Anderson .Paak because
No,
it's
obviously,
it's a
yeah.
co-effort. But yeah, getting into the more, I guess, analytical side, what do you think Bruno Mars has sort of done for the music industry? Because obviously he's still extremely famous. We were just talking about how it's impossible to get Bruno Mars tickets for, a reasonable
Yeah.
price, and how I think he's number 15 on most streamed in
yeah.
Spotify. So like,
Right.
he's making money. He's up there. So
Yeah.
like, what do you think he's done in terms of like progressing the music industry? Because he's pop. He's actually a bunch of different genres depending on the song. But
Exactly, yeah.
What do you think he's done?
Well, like on top of winning, like I think it's 13 Grammys. Like he
Wow,
has
okay.
a lot of Grammys, and they're obviously for like different songs, which just shows like, he's crazy good at what he does.
Right.
But also like, again, connecting to so many different audiences is so important if you want like that type of following. Like I know like Harry Styles is so like you have more of the teenage girl
Yes.
audience that's like, oh my gosh, Harry Styles, and that's great, and he has so many fans, great
Bunch,
musician.
yeah.
But in comparison to like Bruno Mars, you can't compare them because Bruno Mars is just on a different level. Like
I agree.
He
No, I
doesn't
agree.
he doesn't have like it is like you were saying like Elton John and Billy Joel, like they're a different like time frame. So
Right.
you can't compare them either.
Exactly.
It's like, but I would say that Bruno Mars could be seen as an equivalent to like Elton John and Billy Joel in terms of talent and music, and even like he's got such a way with his performance that's like so different than something you've ever seen before.
Right.
Like it's kind of like Elvis, like when Elvis came out and it was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anyone or like do what he does.
Exactly,
And now
yeah.
it's like he's taken Elvis, he's taken Billy Joel, and he's taken all these people who are so famous and like everyone loves, and it's kind of like he put them all together and made it like his own.
Right.
Which makes him even more special.
Yeah, no, I think it's excuse me, I think it's awesome that he's been able to sort of get inspiration from all of these people and then sort of create his own sort of product, his own persona out of
Right.
it, which I think is great. And I know he really tried to go for the sort of bad boy persona, especially during his earlier albums. And I think he sort of slipped away from that a little bit. I mean, it's still obviously there. I feel like he's got so much of a swagger that it's hard
Yeah.
to sort of escape that bad boy persona. But I feel like he's sort of, I don't want to say matured because there's nothing wrong with the bad boy persona, but I feel like he's sort of grown out of it, sort of leapt beyond it.
Right. Yes.
Because I feel like 24 Karat Magic was very bad boy, very sort of like,
Yeah.
like suave and kind of, yeah. But yeah, no, I think he's a really talented artist, and that he gives, obviously can't compare them to Billy Joel and Elton John, but talent-wise, he's sort of on a similar level. And as you were saying it with Harry Styles, like, I think Harry Styles is an excellent musician. I
Yes.
think he's got a great voice. He's a good songwriter. But, he also came from One Direction, which was
Right.
primarily a,
Huge boy band.
huge boy band.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, their target audience was
Teenage girls.
exactly. And whereas I think Bruno Mars just has much more broad, target audience.
Right.
I don't even know if he has a target audience.
No, I don't think he does.
Yeah.
He literally plays for everyone.
Exactly, because his stuff is just so different. So I really think in that sense he's really sort of helped to advance the music industry.
Right.
Like he's sort of like the jack of all trades,
Yeah.
if you will.
I would
because
say
I
that
feel
too.
like people like Harry Styles, they're so specific, and like Taylor Swift. Don't get me wrong, I like Taylor Swift. I think she's got some good songs, but I don't know. I feel like her songs, and I might get hate for this, but I feel like her songs, some of them I feel like they're sort of derivative of each other. Most of them seem to be about sort of like past lovers or like past relationships, whereas like Bruno Mars, like any mood you're feeling, Bruno Mars has a song for you.
Right, yeah.
It, like a completely different tempo, completely different style of music, completely different genre. But Bruno Mars has got you covered.
Right. And he was talking about like when he was writing songs, he would say, oh, like, I really like how that one song sounds. I like how that one, like, I want to put them. And then he was like, no, I can't do that. Like, I want to make my own. And, like, I have to forge this path that shows my unique and, like personal ability to do it on my own.
Exactly.
Which just shows, like, his drive for music.
Exactly. And I really respect that coming from an artist, because I think that there's so many artists who just derive stuff from previous artists or from older artists. And, like, that's cool. Like, inspiration, like, I get it. And, you know, you can be inspired by somebody and want to do something similar to them. But I have a lot of respect for people like Bruno who, you know, take the time to sort of, yeah, they acknowledge other people's work, but they also take the time to sort of create their own work using other people's work. Like, I feel like Olivia Rodrigo, I know she's very popular right now, especially with her new album release, Guts.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of her stuff has sort of come from Taylor Swift.
I agree. Yeah, they give, like, similar vibes.
And I think Taylor Swift actually ended up suing Olivia Rodrigo. I don't know the details of the lawsuit, but, and I could be wrong, but I just think it's crazy that, like, I feel like their music just, it sounds so similar. Exactly. And I feel like when I'm listening to Olivia Rodrigo and I'm listening to Taylor Swift, they almost seem like one and the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even, like, if Bruno Mars has a similar song to someone else, you can just pick another song out of the hat and it's completely different.
Exactly.
You know?
Just shuffle Bruno Mars on Spotify. You'll get a variety of stuff. No, I agree. And even, like, The Weeknd. I love The Weeknd. He's the #1, you know, most listened to artist on Spotify. But a lot of his sort of, like, style, a lot of his stuff sort of comes from, like, the 1980s and, like, the 70s stuff. He's got a lot of more, like, retro songs, which I think is great. But I just really appreciate how Bruno Mars has sort of taken the time to forge his own path while still acknowledging and keeping in mind other people's work.
Right, yeah. And on top of him being, like, a great artist, he also is someone who's known for more than just his music, like, giving back to his community or the world. Like, I know we had to read, like, that book for school.
Oh, yeah. The Flint water crisis.
Yes, he actually donated, I think, $1 million to anyone struggling in Flint with the Flint water crisis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he has a lot of different, like, charities that he donates to, which I know a bunch of celebrities do that, but, like, he makes it a point and he doesn't, like, boast about it, and he doesn't try and make it known. Obviously, he's a celebrity, so people are going to find out.
Right.
But it's not like he's doing it for the public eye. It's just because he wants to be a good person, and, like, that's what he wants to do. Exactly.
Exactly. And you said he grew up in poverty, right?
Yeah, when his parents got divorced, he said it was, like, a big struggle for him, and I think he's one of 6 children.
Okay.
So that's a lot for a kid to go through.
Especially, yeah.
And it does really give you a different, like, sense of like, gratefulness and understanding of what other people are going through, and the fact that he would go through that and then understand it and then be able to empathize with people and decide to give back is just, it's great.
It's great. No, I agree with you. I think one of the big things is the fact that he doesn't make a big stink about it, because sure, you can give as much money as you'd like to, you know, charities and funds and nonprofits and all that type of stuff, but if if you're loud about it and you're like, oh, like, look at me, like, look what I'm doing, then, like, I don't know, I feel like it weakens
the purpose,
it. It defeats the purpose. It's like, okay, like, well, they're only really doing this for attention or for people to like them more. So the fact that he's sort of, I guess, under the table about it, I feel like that, I don't know, I like that.
Yeah.
I've always sort of, now, obviously I've never met Bruno Mars, but he seems like a genuinely good person.
He does, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if that's true or not.
It's always hard to know.
Exactly.
They live in, like, a public eye, so you're never going to know what they're like privately unless you're part of their
doors. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. That's absolutely right. But yeah, I think it's really cool that he, decided to not make a big stink about it, and that he gave money to the Flint crisis. Like, I think that's really important. But yeah, let's circle back to Silk Sonic. I have a big appreciation for Silk Sonic. I just want to touch on that a little bit more. Are you an Anderson .Paak fan at all?
So I haven't ever heard of Anderson .Paak before
Silk Sonic,
which shows Bruno Mars had a big pull.
Yeah.
But after listening to Silk Sonic, like, it's clear to see that the talent, like, that they just complement each other so nicely.
100%.
It's like Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Yeah, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't really familiar with Anderson .Paak before Silk Sonic. And then after going and listening to the Silk Sonic album, I went in and sort of dug through Anderson .Paak's older stuff. And I was like, oh, like, this guy's pretty talented. Like, even without Bruno, this guy's got some good stuff. Am I a diehard Anderson .Paak fan? No, probably not. If I had to see one of them in concert, I'd most likely choose Bruno Mars. But it was nice being introduced to Anderson .Paak and then sort of being able to go back and see like what he's done without Bruno.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
you can see who brings what
to the table. Exactly.
Yes.
And sort of how they complement each other, like you were saying before. But yeah, even just compared to like other modern day artists, like I feel like Bruno Mars, like he's just different.
Yes.
And like I don't know, like what do you think?
I do. I think he's different. Like he just has a different like personality than what I've seen before.
Yeah.
It's just like he carries himself in such like a nonchalant, like I've never seen a really bad altercation with paparazzi or I haven't really heard a story about him in the news that's like, can't believe he did that. You know what I mean? Like I've never been disappointed by him.
Yeah. He did get arrested though, right?
He did, yeah.
Back in I think 2010.
2010, which makes sense because that would be when his first like Nothing on You.
Yeah, that was when
him.
he hit it big.
He hit it big, like that was his like rocket ship to space.
Right,
like,
exactly. That was his.
And obviously everyone makes mistakes.
Totally.
Especially when you're like maneuvering through changing your life from being private and like you're not a celebrity, people don't really know you.
Moving into that public eye,
and and then being followed pretty much everywhere you go. Like that's gonna be a hard transition, which obviously does not condone the use of anything illegal.
Right, yeah.
But
it was cocaine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of seen as a trend with celebrities.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's like you know, like you don't love to see it, but at the same time, like, they're celebrities, you know? Like, I'm not saying that all celebrities, use cocaine or whatever, but, you know, it's one of the common sort of tropes in in Hollywood and whatever. But, but yeah, it's not one of those things where, like, I don't feel disappointed in him. It's like, oh, like, you know, that happened.
Path-wise, you've got, like, Justin Bieber.
Right.
Who, like, started off, again, like, huge. Everyone loved him. And I feel like path-wise, like he went that way and Bruno went that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just the way they approached, I guess, fame is very different.
Yeah, and for our audience members who may not know, do you know what happened to Justin Bieber? Like, just sort of, I
feel like he fell off.
I feel like he fell off too.
A bunch of things I know happened, but in terms of like maturing. If you look at Justin Bieber now versus when he was little, you're like, wow, like that is a change. If you look at Bruno Mars now, since when he was little, you're like, oh my gosh, he grew up. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how it feels to me. Like I just think like he's adorable. Do you know what I mean? And it's not like anything that I've ever seen. And, maybe I just haven't heard that he's done anything bad.
Yeah.
But he never fell off. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, I agree. Bruno Mars.
Even if like, he didn't have a hit song or something happened that like, wasn't the way he intended it. He continued to write. And that just shows he's been big since 2010, which is like, that
over a
says
decade,
a lot. Yeah. To be able to carry like that weight and to be able to carry an audience. I'm sure people who started listening to him in 2010 are still listening to him now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like, going back to sort of what we were saying about Justin Bieber, I think Justin Bieber was thrown into the spotlight way too early. And I think it sort of caused him to not sort of have the childhood, the stereotypical childhood or the upbringing that, most kids have. And I feel like because he was famous so early on, when the fame started to decline, he just didn't really know what to do with himself. Yeah, exactly. He didn't know how to deal with it. Which I don't feel like is the case for Bruno Mars.
No.
And I'm not exactly sure how old he was when Nothing on You came out, but I feel like he was at least a little bit older than Justin Bieber when Justin Bieber first started out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like he built his way up, and it was kind of like someone snapped their fingers and Justin Bieber was big.
famous. Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like I remember when Baby came out. Remember and like
yes.
yeah, and he was like what 12, something like
So
that. Like
young.
so young. Like I couldn't imagine being like famous that young. Like
No,
I remember
yeah.
when I was 12. Like I'd be sitting at home playing with Legos.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't out making hit songs or
No.
whatever. Like I just feel like that's too young. People deserve to have a sort of childhood.
Right.
And, as you were saying, to sort of build their way up to being famous as opposed to just being tossed into it.
Yeah.
Because I think it really does mess with, your brain. Like,
Yeah.
just being like constantly watched that early on and like being in the public eye like all the time and like getting all this attention. It's like, well, if you've never learned to not have attention, like what are you going to do with yourself?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Bruno Mars, just a really talented artist overall. And I don't know, I just feel like he's done a lot for the pop music industry. There was a poll on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it. It was
I
by
did,
the account
yes.
Puberty or whatever. That they were like discussing like who the king of pop was.
Right.
And I think like the final 4 contestants were like Elton John, Michael Jackson, Bruno Mars, and somebody else. Actually, let me look at that somebody else. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, like I said a little bit earlier, I think it's hard to kind of compare all these different artists, like Elton John and Bruno Mars, are just on different levels. And I don't even mean that in terms of like success or who's better than who. It's just like the time period also has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Like Elton John, you hear that name and you're like, yes, I know
Absolutely.
Elton John. And you would hear Bruno Mars and you'll say, yes,
I know
that
Bruno
name.
Mars.
But you're like, Yellow Brick Road, Elton John. You know
Exactly,
what I mean?
right.
But if you hear like Nothing on You or,
Mars.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just completely different. I don't even get like the same vibe from them at all.
Neither do I. I really don't. It's like comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly. Like, you just can't do it. So it's hard to say, like, I mean, 2023, I'd say Bruno Mars, He's carrying the industry right now. But if you ask me, like, years ago,
Who's the king of pop then? And that's
be
exactly
hard.
right. That's exactly what I don't like about the poll, because like they want to know who the king of pop is. Well, I don't know. I feel like there's multiple kings of pop in different time periods.
Exactly.
Like obviously, like Michael Jackson was the king of pop like during the '80s. Like
Right.
he, that was his thing. But like people move on. Like new artists emerge. So I don't think we can elect sort of like this like Hall of Fame like
Yes.
eternal king of pop, because pop changes. Like music changes like each decade. Like we had disco in the 70s, a lot of like techno stuff in the 80s, a lot of like hip hop in the 90s. So like things change, people change, music changes.
Right.
Like I think it's unfair to elect a king of pop,
Right.
because change happens.
yeah, culture.
Exactly.
What's going on in the world, like, everything changes. And I feel like it would be acceptable to say, like, this person maybe has king of pop for the past 5 years. And you could say that based on time, but I think to say, like, now
They
versus
are the king of pop. Yeah.
like throughout time, it's just, you can't even
It's
say
silly.
it because
It's silly.
Yeah, you can't say
Yeah.
it. I agree.
Because change obviously. So I just looked at the poll. The 4th candidate was The Weeknd, which again,
Okay.
like, I'm sorry, but The Weeknd compared to Elton John, like that's
you
not.
can't do it. Yeah,
That's
you
like
can't do it.
again, apples to oranges, 2 completely different things. I don't think they should even be put in the same category, because
Right.
their music is just so different. As a fan of both, I really appreciate both what they, for what they've done / do for the music industry. But I don't think you can put them in the
No.
same level.
You could compare The Weeknd and Bruno Mars. I
Totally,
feel like that
totally,
would be
yeah, that
a
would be
better
a-
comparison. And then if you wanted to like compare Billy Joel and Elton John, like that's more of a comparison, I say, than to compare The Weeknd and Elton John. Like, it's just not.
Yeah, like I feel like Elton John and Michael Jackson, sure, like
Right.
that could work.
Yeah.
Fine, both sort of different decades still, but
But
Elton John
similar,
did have some
like
stuff in the
similar
80s, yeah.
vibes in music
yeah,
and like
similar time period.
right.
Exactly. But I just think it's really unfair to sort of put all these four great artists, each in their own sort of field. Mm-hmm. Like it's just unfair to compare them.
Yeah. And they each don't all have a field, or like they shouldn't be told that like this is the category you fit into, when it's clear that they could fit into a bunch of
Any
different categories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. But one thing I do find funny about Bruno Mars is that, obviously Bruno Mars isn't his actual name, but like
Right.
you hear the name Bruno Mars, it's like, oh, like my guy Bruno. Well,
Yeah.
No, like he's like his name's what? Like
Peter Gene Hernandez. Yeah.
Peter Gene Hernandez. Yeah, like I don't even know where Bruno. Do you know where Bruno comes from?
I'm pretty sure it was someone he like looked up to, a wrestler. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
I think his parents, well, because his dad's name is Peter Hernandez.
Right.
And I think it was like a famous wrestler, was like something
Bruno related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah. And what about Mars? Any idea where that comes
No.
from? Yeah, I don't either. But I think it's a really cool stage name. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome. But I remember the first time I learned that Bruno Mars was not actually his name, I was a little taken aback.
Yeah, me too. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because when you hear Bruno Mars, like you were never told like, oh, he has another name. And I guess it can be kind of common for people to change their names
Right.
when they become famous,
Right.
just for like the trademark
Totally.
or like to make
For their
them
persona
a big
or whatever.
name.
Yeah, exactly.
But just really interesting.
No, totally. Like obviously, like people like The Weeknd, it's like, yeah, okay, well nobody really names their child The Weeknd.
Weeknd, yeah.
Like so he's got to have like another name. Or people like Lady Gaga, like it's
Right.
like, oh yeah, this is my daughter Lady. Like what?
No.
But yeah, like Bruno Mars sounds like, or at least when I was a little kid, I thought that was
So
his
did
actual
I,
name.
yeah.
Like oh,
The
like
Bruno
that's
Mars.
Bruno Mars. Yeah, like and it
First
has a
and
nice
last
ring
name.
to it.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I just think that's kind of funny. But yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Well, thank you all again for tuning into Let's Talk About Listening. I'm Max,
I'm Maria.
and we'll see you in the next one.